Hello, radio readers. I'm Eileen Charles, and here's a hearty welcome to this week's edition of The Book Report. Every week, it's my mission to help you answer the question, what should I be reading? We do that by talking to authors, librarians, publishers, and book lovers like you. All of us love to enter the reading state of mind, where we become so engaged in the story, we are transported away from our current time and place. It's my mission to be your guide to the works that are going to be worth your time. Now, of course, everyone has somewhat different tastes, so I'm going to present you with a menu of flavors so there's a good chance you'll find something you love. For instance, in last week's show, we featured the works and voices of authors as diverse as Condoleezza Rice and Tony Blair, Jon Stewart and Anthony Bourdain. This week, we're going for even more variety. We'll be reviewing works from Bill Bryson, Carl Hiassen, Sophie Kinsella, Sue Grafton, and many more. So stay tuned, and I'll be back in a moment to kick off our audiobook special. A, B, C. Let's see, we're up to U. Sue Grafton first introduced Kinsey Millhone in the Alphabet series in 1982, and since then, both writer and heroine have become icons. Miss Grafton is a writer who consistently breaks the bonds of genre and amazingly has never written the same book twice. In this one, U is for Undertow, it's April 1988, a month before Kinsey Millhone's 38th birthday. She's alone in her office catching up on paperwork when a young man arrives, unannounced. Michael Sutton is 27, an unemployed college dropout. More than 2 decades ago, a 4-year-old girl disappeared, and a recent newspaper story about her kidnapping has triggered a flood of memories. Sutton now believes he stumbled on her lonely burial and could identify the killers if he saw them again. He wants Kinsey's help, and so the story begins. The book moves effortlessly between the 1980s and the 1960s and changes viewpoints as Kinsey pursues witnesses whose accounts often clash. Gradually, everything connects in this twisting, complex, surprise-filled thriller. Here is Sue Grafton's U for Undertow, read by Judy Kay.
What fascinates me about life is that now and then the past rises up and declares itself. Afterward, the sequence of events seems inevitable, but only because cause and effect have been aligned in advance. It's like a pattern of dominoes arranged upright on a tabletop. With the flick of your finger, the first tile topples into the second, which in turn tips into the third, setting in motion a tumbling that goes on, each tile knocking over its neighbor until all of them fall down. Sometimes the impetus is pure chance, though I discount the notion of accidents. Fate stitches together elements that seem unrelated on the surface. It's only when the truth emerges you see how the bones are joined and everything connects. Here's the odd part. In my 10 years as a private eye, this was the first case I ever managed to resolve without crossing paths with the bad guys. Except at the end, of course. My name is Kinsey Millhone. I'm a private detective, female, age 37, with my 38th birthday coming up in a month. Having been married and divorced twice, I am now happily single and expect to remain so for life. I have no children thus far, and I don't anticipate bearing any. Not only are my eggs getting old, but my biological clock wound down a long time ago. I suppose there's always room for one of life's little surprises, but that's not the way to bet. I work solo out of a rented bungalow in Santa Teresa, California, a town of roughly 85,000 souls, who generate sufficient crime to occupy the Santa Teresa Police Department, the County Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol, and the 25 or so local private investigators like me. Movies and television shows would have you believe a PI's job is dangerous, but nothing could be farther from the truth, except, of course, on the rare occasions when someone tries to kill me. Then I'm ever so happy my health insurance premiums are paid up. Threat of death aside, the job is largely research, requiring intuition, tenacity, and ingenuity. Most of my clients reach me by referral, and their business ranges from background checks to process serving, with countless other matters in between. My office is off the beaten path, and I seldom have a client appear unannounced. So when I heard a tapping at the door to my outer office, I got up and peered around the corner to see who it was. Through the glass, I saw a young man pointing at the knob. I'd apparently turned the deadbolt to the locked position when I'd come back from lunch. I let him in, saying, "Sorry about that. I must have locked up after myself without being aware of it." "You're Ms. Milhone?" "Yes." "Michael Sutton," he said, extending his hand. "Do you have time to talk?" We shook hands. "Sure. Can I offer you a cup of coffee?" "No, thanks. I'm fine." I ushered him into my office while I registered his appearance in a series of quick takes. Slim, lank brown hair with a sheen to it, worn long on top and cut short over his ears. Solemn brown eyes, complexion as clear as a baby's. There was a prep school air about him, deck shoes without socks, sharply creased chinos, and a short-sleeve white dress shirt he wore with a tie. He had the body of a boy, narrow shoulders, narrow hips, and long, smooth arms. He looked young enough to be carded if he tried to buy booze. I couldn't imagine what sort of problem he'd have that would require my services. I returned to my swivel chair, and he settled into the chair on the other side of the desk. I glanced at my calendar, wondering if I'd set up an appointment and promptly forgotten it.
In the first few moments of listening to an audiobook, you can be pretty sure what your experience will be. A good reader captivates you from chapter 1, page 1. Many times, the criteria I've used to select an audiobook has been the narrator and not the book title. Alan Sklar is just such a reader. I've been late to work some days because I've been sitting in the office parking lot unable to leave until Alan finishes a chapter. Alan Sklar has been a freelance voice actor for more than 20 years. He's voiced radio and TV commercials, narrated documentaries, corporate video projects, and of course, audiobooks. Alan is a former stage actor with Shakespearean and modern roles on his very impressive resume. He has studied acting with many greats, including Lee Strasberg, whom he recalls stating, "It is the actor's job to illuminate the author's intentions." Take a listen to any of his audiobook projects, and you'll see that this has been Alan's credo. Alan joins us today for part 1 of a 2-part series to share the inside scoop of how a narrator goes about transporting us in time and space. Welcome, Alan. It's so nice to be speaking with you today.
Elaine, I'm delighted to be here.
Our audience wants to know, how did you get started as a reader?
Very slowly. I began my career doing mostly narrations for corporate video. It's called industrials, videos that are shown to sales forces and groups of customers. And I was doing documentaries and, of course, some radio and TV commercials. But I was listening to audiobooks as a fan. I always had 3 or 4 in my car at any given day. And I said to myself, I can do this. I remember that, saying that. And I called one of the audiobook companies in New York, who was one of the biggest at the time, and I introduced myself, and they said, "Sure, you have a nice voice, come on in and audition." So I came in. They gave me 2 or 3 scripts to audition. I had a few minutes to prepare, naturally, and I read for them. And then I got a call maybe a month later, and the producer there hired me to do my first audiobook, and I saved the check. I have the check Xeroxed and framed at home. It's a souvenir of my first audiobook.
And what was that book?
It was a book by some doctor saying, don't go to doctors and don't go to hospitals because you're going to get nosocomial infections, or if you go to the doctor's office, you're going to get iatrogenic infections. The hospitals are not clean, they're not properly managed, and so forth. I forget the name of it.
Probably never made it to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, though.
No.
You know what's always intrigued me when I'm an avid listener of audiobooks? I wonder, how does a male reader do female voices, and Then, how do you keep track of all the inflections, the accents that you do for different characters within a book?
Those are two questions.
Okay, answer
First,
one.
how do you do a female voice? The goal is so that the listener knows at any given moment who's speaking. That's what's important. So sometimes you'll have a poor narrator who says, "Oh, hi, Daddy. How are you, Dad? Can I borrow the car?" "No, honey, you can't borrow the car." That's a very amateurish kind of read. But if I read both the same voice, "Daddy, can I borrow the car tonight?" "Sweetheart, you know you have a junior license. You can't drive at night." "But Melissa's father lets her drive at night." "I don't care what he does. We have an insurance policy, and the insurance is no good if you have an accident." "Oh, Daddy, you're so mean." Now, I did not do a female voice. I did the emotional intention of the line, and you knew exactly who was speaking. That's my choice. That's called an artistic choice. I prefer that. Some very good narrators that I adore use a little quieter voice for a female voice, a little softer, maybe a little tiny pitch higher, but nothing as cartoonish as, "Oh, Daddy, can I borrow the car?" I mean, that's nonsense. But you hear it sometimes.
What part does a producer play in the recording process? Is it like a director in a play?
Sometimes the person who hires me would be a producer/director. They, for example, there are a lot of independent freelance producer-directors in New York. Random House may have 5 or 6 staff producers, but when they get up to here and they're overloaded, they'll call in and engage one of their independent producer directors who they've worked with. They will give him a budget, and he'll call me and say, "Alan, I want you to do this book. I'll send you a copy of it. I've got $2,000, $3,000 in the budget for you," or whatever. And so then we go to the studio, and he's directing me also while I'm reading. He'll catch mouth noises and stomach noises, and he'll say, "No, I'd like to slow that paragraph down." So he was working at producer and director. Sometimes you get somebody who's just strictly a director.
I see. And actually, how long does it take to perform an entire book?
How many pages are in the book?
Let's say 600.
I don't know. Usually a good reader, an efficient reader, can knock off 90 to 100 pages a day. That's usually like a 7-hour day. I prefer to do 85 or 90 a day because then it's exhausting. I mean, we just want to go home and have some Jack Daniels on the rocks and take a shower and go to bed. So I don't want to do that much. But I have done a 200-page book in 2.5 days, a Lawrence Block short murder mystery. Now, sometimes Recorded Books Incorporated is one company that has the readers come in only for a 3-hour session. Come in Monday morning from 9 to 12, Wednesday and Friday. They don't want you to go all day long. They want you to have time to prepare for the next session, do your homework, and they don't want you to tire your voice. I think that's a very civilized agenda to do it that way.
I see. A wise fellow recently described audiobooks as an emotional transport device. Can you let us know about that?
I love that. An emotional transport device. It's like when you drive into you're listening to a good audiobook and you drive into the garage, turn the car off, and you sit in the darkness for the next 15 minutes because you're transported. You're mesmerized by the story and the storyteller. The author and the reader are dancing together. I don't like books where the reader does nothing except just dedicated to the words. Sometimes with authors you get that. They just care about the words and not about what's really going on in the story. So to me, I want to be mesmerized. I want to listen to an audiobook reader, and I want to feel like I feel when I watch Marlon Brando acting or Al Pacino. I want to be on the edge of my seat. Right? Mesmerized.
Yeah. Is it important to interact with the author?
Some publishers tell me, "Alan, do not call the author." And I couldn't figure out why. It's like they want to be in control of the whole relationships. Other publishers that I work with, they love it when I call the author. And I introduce myself to the author, usually by email. I track them down by email and say, "Hi, John, my name is Alan Sklar, blah, blah, blah. I've been recruited to read your book, and I have one word to say to you, help." I have a lot of pronunciation coaching I'm going to need from you. And so please say you'll help me. And they're all like kids. They all say, oh, Alan, of course, I'd love it. Please, just email me the list. So then I emailed them a long list. One list was a book about the origins of Al-Qaeda. And there must have been 12 pages, single-spaced, of Arabic names of people, towns, mosques, all of this stuff. And I spent... Well, he helped me. The author helped me a lot, but I also had to go to... I found a Lebanese family in White Plains near where I live, and I spent the whole Sunday afternoon, about 2 or 3 hours with them, going over... I brought a list for them, going over the whole, one by one, writing in my own personal phonetics. But authors are very, very helpful. Authors also, you get the texture, the emotional texture. One book I had was a very fun book. Why Business People Speak Like Idiots. You know, this corporate speak. They're told by the lawyers not to say anything, so it's all this corporate gobbledygook where they really didn't commit to anything. And I got talking to one of the authors out in Seattle, I think he was, going over pronunciations and things, and I got the feeling, I said, John, I got it. You're a Weisenheimer, aren't you? He says, you got it, that's me. He's a wisecracker in life. And I picked that up from the book. And so for the rest of the book, when I read the book, I had this kind of, the cavalier wisecracking attitude, you know, like a New York cab driver used to be. So the authors are going to be very, very helpful.
Readers, as a resident of Florida, I am a huge fan of Carl Hiassen. The New York Times book review calls him Florida's most entertainingly indignant social critic. As you may know, Hiassen was born and raised in Florida. He is the author of 11 previous novels, including the best-selling Nature Girl, Skinny Dip, Sick Puppy, and Lucky You, plus 3 best-selling children's books, Hoot, Flush, and Scat. He also writes a weekly column for my alma mater, the Miami Herald. I'm endlessly entertained by Hiassen's signature style. He has such a unique way of bringing to life that special brand of Florida shysters and con artists. And I've always admired his focus on how those creeps are hell-bent on ruining Florida. Conservation? Yeah, who really cares? Now, in Star Island, a wicked send-up of American celebrity culture, Hiassen tells the tale of Cherry Pie, that's P-Y-E, a 22-year-old pop star who displays every kind of narcissistic excess. She's hot on the comeback trail from her latest drug and alcohol disaster, but there's a cast of whacked-out characters she needs to deal with. There's even a bewitching encounter with Skink, the unhinged former governor of Florida who resides in a mangrove swamp. He's a wild and crazy guy who stars in many of Hiassen's works. A collection of tawdry characters, a fast-moving plot, and wacky fun in the Florida sun. Readers, get ready for Star Island by Carl Hiassen, read by Stephen Hoya.
On the 15th of March, 2 hours before sunrise, an emergency medical technician named Jimmy Campo found a sweaty stranger huddled in the back of his ambulance. It was parked in a service alley behind the Stefano Hotel, where Jimmy Campo and his partner had been summoned to treat a 22-year-old white female who had swallowed an unwise mix of vodka, Red Bull, hydrocodone, birdseed, and stool softener. In all respects, a routine South Beach 911 call. Until now. The stranger in Jimmy Campo's ambulance had 2 35mm digital cameras hanging from his fleshy neck, and a bulky gear bag balanced on his ample lap. He wore a Dodgers cap and a Bluetooth ear set. His ripe, florid cheeks glistened damply, and his body reeked like a prison laundry bag. "Get out of my ambulance," Jimmy Campo said. "Is she dead?" the man asked excitedly. "Dude, I'm calling the cops if you don't move it." "Who's up there with her? Colin? Shia?" The stranger outweighed Jimmy Campo by 65 pounds, but not an ounce of it was muscle. Jimmy Campo, who'd once been a triathlete, dragged the intruder from the vehicle and deposited him on the sticky pavement beneath a streetlight. "Chill, for Christ's sake," the man said, examining his camera equipment for possible damage. Stray cats tangled and yowled somewhere in the shadows. Inside the ambulance, Jimmy Campo found what he was looking for, a sealed, sterile packet containing a coiled intravenous rig to replace the one that the female overdose victim had ripped from her right arm while she was thrashing on the floor. The stranger struggled to his feet and said, "I'll give you $1,000. "For what?" "When you bring it downstairs, let me take a picture." The man dug into the folds of his stale trousers and produced a lump of cash. "You got a job to do, and so do I. Here's $1,000. Jimmy Campo looked at the money in the stranger's hand. Then he glanced up at the third floor of the hotel where his partner was almost certainly dodging vomit. "She famous or something?" Jimmy Campo asked. The photographer chuckled. "Man, you don't even know?" Jimmy Campo was thinking about the 52-inch high-def that he'd seen on sale at Brandsmart. He was thinking about his girlfriend on a rampage with his maxed-out MasterCard at the Dadeland Mall. He was thinking about all those nasty letters from his credit union. "Whoever she is, she's not dead," he told the photographer. "Not tonight." "Cool." The man continued to hold out the wad of hundreds in the glow of the streetlight, as if teasing a mutt with raw hamburger. He said, "All you gotta do, before loading her in the wagon, just pull down the covers and step away so I can get my shot. 5 seconds is all I need." "It won't be pretty. She's a sick young lady." Jimmy Campo took the crumpled money and smoothed it into his wallet. "Is she awake at least?" the photographer asked. "On and off. But you could see her eyes in a picture, right? She's got those awesome sea-green eyes." Jimmy Campo said, "I didn't notice." "You really don't know who she is? Seriously?" "Who do you work for, anyway?" "A limited partnership," the man said. "Me, myself, and I." "And where can I see this great picture you're going to take?" "Everywhere. You'll see it everywhere," the stranger said. 18 minutes later, Jimmy Campo and his partner emerged from the Stefano Hotel, guiding a collapsible stretcher upon which lay a slender, motionless form. The photographer was surprised at the absence of a retinue. No bodyguards or boyfriends or hangers-on. A lone Miami Beach police officer followed the stretcher down the alley. When the photographer began snapping pictures, the cop barely reacted, making no effort to shield the stricken woman from the flashbursts. That should have been a clue.
Confession time. Yes, I love to read, but those who know me know I am usually able to squeeze a little retail therapy into each week. So it's no surprise I've always enjoyed listening to the Shopaholic series by Sophie Kinsella. Yep, it's pure fluff and frippery, and that's why it can be the perfect counterpoint to real life. In this novel, our shopper extraordinaire and my hero, Becky Brandon, née Bloomwood, returns in a hilarious tale of married life and toddlerhood. Poor Becky thought motherhood would be a breeze, and that having a daughter was a dream come true, a shopping friend for life. But it's trickier than she thought. 2-year-old Minnie has quite a different approach to shopping. Like any toddler, Minnie creates havoc everywhere she goes, and her favorite word is mine. The book also spotlights Becky's challenges of navigating through tough financial times. We can relate. And now, here's Mini Shopaholic, read by the charming Rosalind Landor.
Okay, don't panic. I'm in charge. I, Rebecca Brandon, née Bloomwood, am the adult, not my 2-year-old daughter. Only I'm not sure she realizes this. Minnie, darling, give me the pony. I try to sound calm and assured, like Nanny Sue off the telly. Pony! Minnie grips the toy pony more tightly. No, pony. Mine! She cries. Mine, pony! Oh, it was all going so well. I'd been round the whole shopping mall and bought all the last little things on my Christmas list. Minnie and I were heading toward Santa's grotto, and I only stopped for a moment to look at a dollhouse. Whereupon Minnie grabbed a toy pony off the display. Now I'm in the middle of Ponygate. A mother in J. Brand's skinny jeans with an impeccably dressed daughter walks past, giving me the mummy once-over. Since I had Minnie, I've learned that the mummy once-over is even more savage than the Manhattan once-over. In the mummy once-over, they don't just assess and price your clothes to the nearest penny in one sweeping glance. They also take in your child's clothes, pram brand, nappy bag, snack choice, and whether your child is smiling, snotty or screaming. Minnie definitely scores top marks for her outfit. Dress, one off Danny Kovitz. Coat, Rachel Riley. Shoes, Baby Dior. And I got her safely strapped into her toddler reins. Bill Amberg leather. Really cool. They were in vogue. But instead of smiling angelically like the little girl in the photo shoot, she's straining against them like a bull waiting to dash into the ring. Minnie. I let go of the reins and put my arms round her so that she feels safe and secure, just like it recommends in Nanny Sue's book, Taming Your Tricky Toddler. I bought it the other day, just out of idle interest. I mean, it's not that I'm having problems with Minnie or anything. The thing about Minnie is she's spirited. She has firm opinions about things, like jeans. She won't wear them. Or carrots. She won't eat them. And right now her firm opinion is that she should have a toy pony. Minnie, darling, I say, it would make me very happy if you gave me the pony. That's right. Give it to Mummy. My fingers are closing around the pony's head. Mine! Minnie wrenches the pony out of my hand and makes a run for it across the shop floor. Minnie! I grab my carrier bags and leg it furiously after her. As I catch up with her, I'm panting. I really have to start my postnatal exercises sometime. Give me the pony. Mine pony! Her dark eyes flash at me with a resolute glint. Sometimes I look at Minnie, and she's so like her father it gives me a jolt. Speaking of which, where is Luke? We were supposed to be doing Christmas shopping together, as a family, but he disappeared an hour ago and I haven't seen him since. Minnie, we're not buying it, I say. You've got lots of toys already, and you don't need a pony. A woman with straggly dark hair, grey eyes and toddlers in a twin buggy shoots me an approving nod. I can't help giving her the mummy once-over myself, and she's one of those mothers who wears Crocs over nubbly homemade socks. Why would you do that? Why? It's monstrous, isn't it? She says. Those ponies are £40. My kids know better than to even ask, she adds, shooting a glance at her two boys, who were slumped silently, thumbs in mouths. I've got mine well trained. Absolutely, I say. I couldn't agree more. The biggest mistake is giving in to them. The woman is regarding Minnie with a pebble-like gaze. That's what starts the rot. Well, I never give in to my daughter, I say. Pony! Minnie's wails turn to heart-rending sobs. She is such a drama queen. She gets it from my mum. Good luck, then. The woman moves off. Minnie, stop, I hiss as soon as she's disappeared. It's only a silly toy. What's so special about it anyway? And for the first time, I look properly at the pony.
We're at the end of an election week. Wow, what a roller coaster. I think this would be a perfect time to share some audiobooks with you on politicians who have shaped America in the last 40 years. Listen in, then cast your vote for which you'd like to read. Of course, there have been many books about Hillary Clinton, but when Carl Bernstein takes on her story, you know it will be a great read, and in this case, a great listen. So here is A Woman in Charge by Carl Bernstein, read by Dick Rodstein.
The years of the Clinton presidency delineated what many friends and associates regarded as the most profound difference of character between Hillary and Bill Clinton: her capacity for personal growth and change. Emotionally, he's still the same guy who got off the boat after Oxford, a worn-out presidential assistant said as the Clintons left the White House on January 20th, 2001. Hillary, sworn in on January 3rd as New York's junior senator, had, on the other hand, demonstrated extraordinary capability for change and evolutionary development. From Goldwater girl to liberal Democrat, from fashion victim to power suit sophisticate, from embattled First Lady to establishmentarian senator. In the course of the 22 years that took them from Yale Law School to the governorship of Arkansas to the presidency, the Clintons had formed their politics, a very specific set of values and calculations arrived at from their separate experiences, expertise, and backgrounds, joined, tempered, and perfected in endless discussion, always with the understanding that they were on a journey together. And though her intellectual firepower was not nearly as spectacular as his, and her political instincts could be clumsy, she was in every sense his political partner, the person with whom he discussed every significant matter of policy, strategy, ideology, or ambition. Bill and Hillary's marriage would prove to be an uninterrupted dialogue of ideas and aspirations, and a lasting love, often punctuated by passionate argument. Her counsel was the constant of his method and political development, though in the Little Rock governor's mansion and later the White House, he would on occasion, sometimes to her frustration, follow a course at variance from the one she advised. The journey, their term, was at once endlessly romantic and unapologetically ambitious, a trek across the political landscape in which they intended to inspire the expansion of their country's social consciousness, based on their own ideas and ideals, and those of their generation. There is no question, judging from their own words and those of their friends, that since their courtship, each had come to regard the other as the brightest star in their universe, that this fusion of energy and purpose was never just about him, but about them and the art of the possible. They would change the American story. To their opponents and enemies, who grew ever more numerous and outraged as the Clintons marched toward the summit, seemingly unbowed by humiliation and unfazed by peril, ambush, and attacks that would have felled lesser mortals, their journey was an act of hubris such as modern American politics had never witnessed. Hillary Rodham's childhood was not the suburban idyll suggested by the shaded front porch and gently sloping lawn of what was once the family home at 235 Wisner Street in Park Ridge, Illinois. In this leafy environment of post-war promise and prosperity, the Rodhams were distinctly a family of odd ducks, isolated from their neighbors by the difficult character of her father, Hugh Rodham, a sour, unfulfilled man whose children suffered his relentless demeaning sarcasm and misanthropic inclination, endured his embarrassing parsimony, and silently accepted his humiliation and verbal abuse of their mother. Yet as harsh, provocative, and abusive as Rodham was, he and his wife, the former Dorothy Howell, imparted to their children a pervasive sense of family and love for one another that in Hillary's case is of singular importance. Dorothy and Hugh Rodham, despite the debilitating pathology and undertow of tension in their marriage, discerned readily by visitors to their home, were assertive parents who at mid-century intended to convey to their children an inheritance secured by old-fashioned values and verities. They believed and preached in their different traditions that with discipline, hard work, encouragement, often delivered in an unconventional manner, and enough education at home, school, and church, a child could pursue almost any dream. In the case of their only daughter, Hilary Diane, born October 26, 1947, this would pay enormous dividends, sending her into the world beyond Park Ridge with a steadiness and sense of purpose that eluded her two younger brothers, Hugh Jr., and Tony. But it came at a price. Hugh imposed a patriarchal unpleasantness and ritual authoritarianism on his household, mitigated only by the distinctly modern notion that Hilary would not be limited in opportunity or skills by the fact that she was a girl.
Meghan McCain came to prominence as the straight-talking, progressive daughter of Senator John McCain. Her profile has only risen since the election ended in favor of the other guy. What makes Meghan so appealing? As a new role model for young, creative, and vocal members of the GOP, she's unafraid to mix it up and speak her mind. In Dirty Sexy Politics, she takes a hard look at the future of her party. She doesn't shy away from serious issues, and her down-to-earth style will keep you listening. In this witty, candid, and boisterous book, Meghan takes us behind the scenes of the campaign trail. She steals campaign signs in New Hampshire, tastes the nightlife in Nashville, and has a very strange encounter with Laura and Jenna Bush at the White House. Along the way, she falls in love with America, and you're going to fall in love with this book. Let's listen to Dirty Sexy Politics by Meghan McCain.
Sex and politics are a lot alike. You don't have to be good at them to enjoy them. Barry Goldwater. Introduction. Freedom is addictive. Once you've tasted it, you will hunt for it again and again. And our passion for freedom brings us together more than it pulls us apart. We have fought to remove obstacles in the way of it. We have battled and died, picketed, paraded, rallied, and staked everything we've had on it. We founded our country with our desire for freedom, and it continues to drive our nation's energy and progress. I was raised in a house that was open to new ideas, new people, and open to our differences. We had rules about how to treat others, rules about being honest and respectful. We had rules about tolerance. But they weren't rules that were supposed to brainwash us and turn us into mini Cindy and John McCain's. My brothers and sister and I were raised with a taste of freedom. My parents believed in us, believed in the people we were, and the people we would become. Would they really want me to have tattoos, swear on TV, or even write this book? Maybe not. And that's the point. I am not a social or physical extension of my mom and dad, except that I represent their great hope that freedom and room to grow is how individuals find themselves and create their own lives. Under that big, wide-open sky of Arizona where I grew up, there seemed to be room for everybody. Honesty is a quality of freedom and is addictive and exhilarating in the same way. By being honest about yourself, you are asking for room and space. You are making a declaration of your humanity and independence. If we are honest with ourselves and about ourselves, suddenly everyone has a little more room to be free. We are more trustworthy if we are honest too. If we are open, we aren't hiding anything. There are no secrets is one of my personal mottos. I feel that hiding is a waste of time and energy. Everybody will figure out what kind of human being you really are. So I like to save people the trouble and just lay it out there. What you see is what you get.
Working behind the scenes for 18 months, Bob Woodward, yes, the Bob Woodward, has written the most intimate and sweeping portrait of President Obama. He looks at Obama's critical decisions on the Afghan war, the secret war in Pakistan, and the worldwide fight against terrorism. Drawing on internal memos, classified documents, meeting notes, and hundreds of hours of interviews with key players, including the president himself, Woodward offers an original, you-are-there account of Obama and his team in this time of turmoil and uncertainty. So let's listen to Obama's War by Bob Woodward, narrated by Boyd Gaines. Here goes.
On Thursday, November 6th, 2008, Barack Obama arranged to meet in Chicago with Mike McConnell, the Director of National Intelligence. McConnell, 65, a retired Navy vice admiral with stooped shoulders, wisps of light brown hair, and an impish smile, had come to present details of the most highly classified intelligence operations and capabilities of the vast American espionage establishment he oversaw as Director of National Intelligence. In just 75 days, the formidable powers of the state would reside with the 47-year-old Obama. He would soon be, as the intelligence world often called the president, the first customer. McConnell arrived early at the Kluzinski Federal Building, an austere Chicago skyscraper, with Michael J. Morrell, who had been President George W. Bush's presidential briefer on 9/11, and now headed the Central Intelligence Agency's Analysis Division. 2 members of Senator Obama's transition team from the last Democratic administration greeted them. John Podesta, Bill Clinton's chief of staff for the final 2 years of his presidency, and James Steinberg, a former deputy national security advisor in the Clinton White House.
Here is the edited, annotated diary of President Jimmy Carter, filled with his insights into his presidency, his relationships with friends and foes alike, and his lasting impact on issues that still preoccupy America. Each day during his presidency, Carter made several entries into a private diary, recording his thoughts, impressions, delights, and frustrations. He offered assessments of cabinet members, congressmen, and foreign leaders. He narrated the progress of secret negotiations, such as those that led up to Camp David. When his 4-year term came to an end in early 1981, the diary amounted to more than 5,000 pages. This extraordinary document has never been made public until now. So here it is, The White House Diary by Jimmy Carter, narrated by Jimmy Carter and Boyd Gaines.
1977. I began keeping this diary in part due to an offhand comment by Richard Nixon. Rosa and I first met Nixon when we attended the National Governors Conference in 1971. The president walked up to us at a White House reception, turned to Rosa and asked, "Young lady, do you keep a diary?" Rosa replied, "No, sir." Nixon then said, "You'll be sorry." Since this was our first conversation with the president, it made a lasting impact. Within a day or two of my inauguration, I began making written notes of my thoughts and activities on the pages of a legal pad, and on February 26, I began dictating into a small tape recorder, more frequently and currently.
Thursday, January 20th. A couple of months before the inauguration, I got a letter from Senator Proxmire, who is very interested in physical fitness. He suggested that I walk from the Capitol to the White House on Inauguration Day. I responded without making any promise, and about 3 weeks before the inauguration, I informed the Secret Service that I would do so. I later told my wife, my son Chip, and no one else until the night before inauguration, at which time I told Vice President Mondale and a couple of staff members, including Jody Powell. I thought it would be a good demonstration of confidence by the new president in the people of our country as far as security was concerned, and also would be a tangible indication of some reduction in the imperial status of the president and his family. We were gratified at the response. Many people along the parade route, when they saw that we were walking, began to weep, and it was an emotional experience for us as well. I was surprised at the enormous attention this act received from the news media, and believe it was a good decision. I think the inauguration speech itself, perhaps one of the briefest on record for the first inauguration of a president, was quite compatible with my announcement speech in December 1974, and also with my acceptance speech at the Democratic Convention. It accurately expresses some of the major themes of my administration. Even though I had been preparing to be president, I was genuinely surprised when, in the benediction by the bishop from Minnesota, he referred to blessings on President Carter. Just the phrase, President Carter, was startling to me. I would say that the quarters at the White House were quite similar to those we enjoyed as the governor's family in Georgia, but I have been constantly impressed, I almost said overwhelmed, at the historical nature of the White House, occupied for the first time by our second president, John Adams. When I see a desk or a writing cabinet or a book or a sideboard or a bed that was used by Thomas Jefferson or Abraham Lincoln, Franklin Roosevelt or Truman or Kennedy, I have a feeling of almost unreality about my being president, but also a feeling of both adequacy and determination that I might live up to the historical precedents established by my predecessors.
Now, let's rejoin Alan Sklar and hear more of his insights into being an audiobook reader. What's your opinion of authors who actually read their own works, whether it be a biography or a history?
There are very few authors that I enjoy listening to. I listened to American history books recently, I think one about the Revolution, 1776, by David McCullough. He was fabulous. Of course, the author knows the material, but this guy was so alive and made it such fun. Another author I like is John le Carré. John le Carré has contempt for all his characters, and he reads in this very prissy British accent. And he's just so nasty about everybody. He's really a scream. It's really fun. But other authors are dedicated to the words. And my old acting teacher, Sandy Meisner, used to yell at us in class. He said, it's not about the words. You act the event, not the words. So what is the scene? If the scene is a love scene, you're acting it tenderly. You're reading it. The word no can be read so many different ways. Do you love me? No, you know I don't. And of course it means just the opposite. So it's not about the words. Authors are dedicated to the words, and they've had minimal acting training. There are some reviewers. I read reviews in some of the magazines on audiobooks, and the reviewer says, oh no, this actor was too much. We like at night. Just stick to the script. Just read the book and a flat reading. Let us hear the author's words. We don't want the reader to have any acting interpretations. And I think that, for me, that's all wrong. You know, it's what makes horse racing. Some people want it that way. I prefer somebody who mesmerizes me.
Speaking of mesmerizing, can you share with us your personal favorites, narrators and colleagues of yours?
Absolutely. I adore Mark Hamill, George Guidall, Graham Malcolm, Robert Forster. I've been listening to a lot of his stuff recently. He sounds like he grew up in some of the finest gutters in Buffalo, New York. He's got this great voice for murder mysteries and things. And Alexander Skirby, who died, absolutely brilliant. But these are the guys, and I listen to them over and over and over again. My favorite audiobook that I listen to is a novel by Lawrence Block called A Walk Among the Tombstones, published by Recorded Books Incorporated. And Mark Hamill is the narrator, and I listen to that once a year for the last 10 years because he's brilliant. His pauses are more interesting than when some other reader's talking. I mean, he's such a fine actor. He's right there in the moment. The conversations are brilliant. I don't listen to too many women. I'm really interested in stealing ideas from men. Lisette Lecat, L-E-C-A-T. I fell in love with her when I first listened to her reading Alexander McCall Smith's
The Botswana Detective Agency. First Lady Detective Agency.
Well, I told Anita, you got to listen to this. This is thrilling. What I was hearing was physical relaxation, which is something that's very important. You're taught with a good acting teacher. Nothing's going to happen emotionally unless you're physically relaxed. She is so relaxed. You can hear it in her voice. She also grew up in South Africa, so she knows all these accents in Botswana. The book is not a book. Nothing happens in the book. The book is a love poem to the people in this country of Botswana. There's no murders. Nobody gets killed. There's no chases or anything like that. No bank robbery. Nothing happens. It's just this day-to-day stuff, and it's so charming. But she is just a brilliant actress.
I actually heard the author speak, and he reinforces that this is just a very gentle, entertaining look at her daily life.
Right.
And no one will ever get murdered in
Precious Ramotswa.
That's right. Ma Ramotswa. Well, Alan, what have the books that you've read and performed that you remember the most and that you would like our listeners to run and go pick up?
One book that I was giggling during the entire recording. I have to stop and do that whole paragraph again several times. It's a book called Executrix, T-R-I-X, written by Stanley Bing. That's his pen name. He's a business writer for Wall Street Journal and Fortune magazine. The book is about how to keep your job in a corporation, but really not do any work at all. You meet customers, clients for breakfast at 10 o'clock, and then you come back at 12 to your office, and then you have to go out to lunch again, and you take snoozes in your office. All these great ways of avoiding work, and yet still maintaining a good reputation. It was a very funny book, Executrix. A book I adored doing for Harper Audio was Jesus for the Non-Religious by Bishop Jack Spong from Newark, New Jersey, retired bishop. I got a chance in that book to read and be like these guys on these cable channels, these religious speakers. Some of these guys fill this auditorium with 20,000 people like Billy Graham does, you know. And that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to fill the auditorium with 50,000 people and have them all mesmerized. And I'm going to be quoting from the Bible, and I got a chance to do that. And I thought I did it well, and my producer and director, they also thought I did it very effectively. I did a book by Lawrence Wright called The Looming Tower, which I referred to before, which is the history of Al-Qaeda, how it got started. Very interesting book. The Way of the World by Ron Suskind. These two books got some nice awards too, and they were finalists for audio awards, which is like the Oscars. The Way of the World was about a young Pakistani boy comes to this country, and another storyline with a young Afghan boy comes to this country and lives with American parents for a year, an exchange program, and how they had such troubles adapting to the American way. It was just beautifully written. I just fell in love with this author's writing. And as a matter of fact, I usually do a lot of homework when I do a book. I like to read a book at least once and then prepare for the next. When I go into the studio to read, I prepare on the train going down the night before for that 50, 60, 80 pages, whatever, for a second time. This book was thrown at me at the last minute. I read the 3/5 of it, 70% of it, but the last part of the book, I hadn't done any rehearsal at all. I hadn't read it. But I knew the author by then. I was very comfortable with his prose, his rhythms, his humor, his gentleness. So that was fun. I've done about 6 or 7 books with the hero of the book, protagonist is Matt Scudder, an alcoholic detective in New York City. And he solves crimes. He left the police force. He's an unlicensed, and just does this for colleagues and friends, by Lawrence Block. And I love the character of Matt Scudder. And those were really fun books to do, too. Have I answered your question?
Yes, you have. Thank you so much, Alan. I know that I always look for you as a reader when I'm choosing an audio title. And readers, now that you've met Alan, I'm sure you'll do that, too. Thank you so much, Alan.
You're very welcome. It was fun.
The first Bill Bryson book I read was A Walk in the Woods. Okay, I admit it, that hooked me. Now, Bryson brings us the wonderful At Home, the tale of the 19th century Victorian parsonage in Norfolk, where Bill and his family currently reside. It's a part of England where nothing of any great significance has happened since the Romans decamped. Yet one day, Bryson begins to consider how very little he knows about the ordinary things of life as he finds them in his comfortable home. To remedy this, he forms the idea of journeying around his house from room to room to, quote, write a history of the world without leaving home, unquote. The bathroom provides the occasion for a history of hygiene. The bedroom, sex, death, and sleep. The kitchen, nutrition, and the spice trade. And on we go, as Bryson shows how each has figured in the evolution of private life. Whatever happens in the world, he demonstrates, ends up in our house, in the paint and the pipes and the pillows and every item of furniture. I think you'll agree that Bill Bryson is one of the liveliest, most inquisitive minds on the planet. Indeed, he is a master of turning the isolated or mundane fact into an occasion for the most diverting exposition imaginable. You be the judge. Here is Bill Bryson reading At Home.
Introduction.
Sometime after we moved into a former Church of England rectory in a village of tranquil anonymity in Norfolk, I had occasion to go up into the attic to look for the source of a slow but mysterious drip. As there are no stairs to the attic in our house, the process involved a tall stepladder and much unseemly wriggling through a ceiling hatch, which was why I had not been up there before, or have returned with any enthusiasm since. When I did finally flop into the dusty gloom and clambered to my feet, I was surprised to find a secret door, not visible from anywhere outside the house, in an external wall. The door opened easily and led out onto a tiny rooftop space, not much larger than a tabletop, between the front and back gables of the house. Victorian houses are often a collection of architectural bewilderments, but this one was starkly unfathomable. Why an architect had troubled to put in a door to a space so lacking in evident need or purpose was beyond explanation. But it did have the magical and unexpected effect of providing the most wonderful view. It is always quietly thrilling to find yourself looking at a world you know well, but have never seen from such an angle before. I was perhaps 50 feet above the ground, which in mid-Norfolk more or less guarantees a panorama. Immediately in front of me was the ancient flint church to which our house was once an adjunct. Beyond, down a slight incline, and slightly separate from church and rectory, was the village to which both belonged. In the distance, in the other direction, was Wyndham Abbey, a heap of medieval splendor commanding the southern skyline. In a field in the middle distance, a tractor rumbled and drew straight lines in the soil. All else in every direction was quiet, agreeable, timeless English countryside. What gave all this a certain immediacy was that just the day before I had walked across a good part of this view with a friend named Brian Ayres. Brian had just retired as the county archaeologist, and may know more about the history and landscape of Norfolk than anyone alive. He had never been to our village church, and was eager to have a look. It is a handsome and ancient building, older than Notre Dame in Paris, and about the same vintage as Chartres and Salisbury cathedrals. But Norfolk is full of medieval churches. It has 659 of them, more per square mile than anywhere else in the world, so any one is easily overlooked. "Have you ever noticed," Brian asked as we stepped into the churchyard, "how country churches nearly always seem to be sinking into the ground?" He pointed out how this one stood in a slight depression, like a weight placed on a cushion. The church foundations were about 3 feet below the churchyard around it. "Do you know why that is?" he asked. I allowed, as I often do when following Brian around, that I had no idea. "Well, it isn't because the church is sinking," Brian said, smiling. "It's because the churchyard has risen. How many people do you suppose are buried here?" I glanced appraisingly at the gravestones and said, "I don't know, 80, 100? "I think that's probably a bit of an underestimate," Brian replied with an air of kindly equanimity. "Think about it. A country parish like this has an average of 250 people in it, which translates into roughly 1,000 adult deaths per century, plus a few thousand more poor souls that didn't make it to maturity. Multiply that by the number of centuries that the church has been there, and you can see that what you have here is not 80 or 100 burials, but probably something more in the order of, say, 20,000. This was, bear in mind, just steps from my front door. 20,000, I said. He nodded matter-of-factly. That's a lot of mass, needless to say. It's why the ground has risen 3 feet.
If you've been enjoying our theme music, and I know I love it, check out more tunes by blues artist Erin James from her Soul Garden CD. Thanks again, Erin. Readers, I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth special on audiobooks. We've got exciting news from the book world each week. Thanks again for being a reader of our show. The book report comes to you every week at the same time, so listen up and listen in. I'm Elaine Charles, and I'll see you next week.